Got one of these cheap water distillers for making distilled water for my battery banks, and figured might as well do a safety video of it. Since Chinesium, no agency approvals, not that that means much with fraud nowadays, I wanted to see how well it was made, and it's about what I'd expect for the price point. Green wire, which is interesting for the neon idiot light on the front panel. Well, if an on button and a light count as a front panel. Even though they're also using green wire for its normal color, which is the grounding connections to the internal tank. Of course, blue neutral because IEC garbage. White's better neutral color, but that's obvious. And again, the black is the hot, because the way this is wired is the hot comes into this. By the way, this is not electrically connected to anything right now. It's not live. Hot comes in, goes to this resettable over temperature switch, where you have to push a button to reset it. It doesn't automatically reset the way this one does, because this is the secondary thing, which is wired in series with the neutral. Goes over to this connection, which is for this, which is the fan, because the way that this condenses the steam that's boiled in the main chamber, it's drawing cold room air over the condenser coil and then blows it out the top. So this does give off quite a bit of heat in operation, about 750 watts worth, because it does meet the, I don't know how readable it is, this is fairly corroded yet, 120 volts, 750 watts there, and then 21-01, I'm guessing that's either January or week 1, 2021, which again fits. And hot also goes over to the connection on the heating element there, and then neutral. They're basically all common together. They go through the secondary over temperature protection and then back to the mains inlet. And one thing, if you're using one of these, that I would do differently than this is, ordinarily the way that this shuts off is because the water in the reservoir, because it's effectively at atmospheric pressure, it's clamping the temperature of this to plus minus 212 degrees Fahrenheit. A bit higher if you're below sea level, a bit lower if you're above sea level. And when all the water boils off, well, this is still dumping 750 plus minus watts into the bottom of the reservoir. So the temperature will spike. That spike will be carried by this aluminum strap over to this temperature switch, which will trip, and shutting the device off, shutting the fan off, and also shutting off the idiot light there. And then to restart it, you'll have to push the on button to reset that and start a new cycle. What you want to do instead is, and this will have to be determined through experimentation, use usually not a set time, on-off type timer, but a countdown type timer to shut this off when it's got about 1/4 to 1/2 inch of water left in the bottom of the chamber. So that avoids the temperature stress from that temperature spike on the heating element, and to a lesser degree the switches, and just mechanically to the reservoir container. But it also means that you won't have to clean this out anywhere near as much, because what'll happen is all the residual minerals and stuff will form a rather nasty crust on the bottom of this with time, and cleaning that out is not exactly the most fun thing in the world, because it means boiling a bunch of vinegar or something or other in one of these. But yeah, it's be a good feature for this to incorporate, but again, it's Chinesium made down to a price, not up to a standard. So again, this is one of those things where, and again, liability reasons, but use with supervision. If you're planning on turning one of these on, leaving the house for a couple of hours, don't do it. And in fact, the reason I got one of these is as a dump load for one of my solar systems, so that way I'll turn this thing on in the early afternoon, run it for a couple hours, because that battery bank's already full, and I've got 3.8 kilowatts of solar on that system that would otherwise be going more or less to waste, because the lighting load on that system most of the time is a couple tens of watts at most. So yeah, it's a useful thing as dump load, and any concerns I'll have or problems I have with it, I'll post a follow-up video, but yeah, overall it's, you're getting what you're paying for. And as an example of kind of timer you could use, something like one of these, which is rated for 1000 watts. Definitely no less than 1000 watts to account for safety margins. And run it on probably the 2-hour setting. In the case of something like this, if there's one that allows you to set it for 3 hours, then use that. Again, this is just not saying use a specific timer, just something like this will work very good for the distiller.